What's up, my movie fanatics, and welcome to the second episode of Fear Face Off. Got a lot of positive feedback the first episode. I just want to take a minute to thank everybody for tuning in, watching it, enjoying it. I'm having a blast doing this. And I just wanted to say, before I get into everything, I'm going to cut this one to be a lot shorter. I'm going to focus mainly on the differences, the similarities, maybe not go into much detail with the similarities and differences. And yeah, I want to talk, just kind of wrap it up quicker. As always, don't forget, tons of spoilers. So yeah, if you have not seen these movies that I mentioned beforehand, do not watch them. You will probably know from the title what the episode is. So let's jump right into it. So this week I got to watch The Hills Have Eyes and I Spit on Your Grave. It was actually really fun because they were both good hack and slash films. If you like odd, like kind of twisted, sickening hack and slash films, I would recommend either of these. So let's start with The Hills Have Eyes. The Hills Have Eyes, the original movie, was filmed in 1977. The director was Wes Craven, and we had John Stedman as Fred and Janice Blythe as Ruby. So those were the main stars back then. And then in 2006, we got the remake. The director was Alexander Aja. I don't know if I pronounced that right. Remember, guys, I'm terrible with names. Excuse me. Dan Bird played Bobby Carter, and Emily D. Raven, the Raven played Brenda. Ted Levine played Big Bob. Now, all these people had very prominent parts. Nobody that I really recognized, so I just kind of picked them because they had prominent parts throughout the film. So let's talk about both these movies. Well, both these movies are so much alike, yet so much different at the same time. Both movies starts off with a gas station, and there's an owner to the gas station, and he's talking to he's either screaming for a girl named Ruby, which happened in 2006, and in 1977 he actually talks to a random girl named Ruby, and she says she's hungry and she wants to trade stuff, and he's like, I don't have anything else to trade. Very interesting and different. But before that, in 2006, we actually get an interesting intro. There are hazmat men walking around the desert, and they're looking for radiation spikes, and they end up getting killed. So that is that. So the movie leads into something very interesting. A family pulls up to this gas station in the middle of nowhere, and they're a family, and they say, they are doing the old school family vacation. When I talk old school family vacation, I mean they get a truck, they get a trailer, and they're driving to wherever they want to go. They don't want to use a plane, they just are old-fashioned fun. So in 1977, this is where the big difference is. The gas station owner is very mean, and he's very secretive, is a good way to put it. But in 2006, he's very friendly, he's very open, he wants to talk to these people. We find out that both families want to go to California for the summer vacation, and that's when things make a turn for the worst. So the big difference is how everything turns for the worst. In 1977, the family is told to just turn around and go back, stay away from the hills. In 2006, the gas station owner is actually like, hey, I know this shortcut. If you take this shortcut through the hill, you will get to your destination quicker. It'll probably cut in like 2 hours driving off your time or whatever. So the big thing that happens is that the car ends up wrecking. In 1977, there's these planes that are just swooping by, and they're super, super, super low, and that they're flying by so loud that it actually causes the truck to go off balance, and it throws the whole family off, and they end up hitting a tree and they wreck. In 2006, it's a little bit different. They're cutting through the shortcut, and they end up hitting a spike strip. They end up swerving out of control, hitting a rock, and then they're stranded. Now that was the big difference, but there's a ton of similarities until the end here. One big thing is they have two dogs named Beauty and Beast, which I thought was pretty cool, and Beauty is very aggressive. She just runs off and she gets lost a few times, and Beast is just kind of like one to stay back and be protective and stalk his prey. So, and then another big event that happens exactly the same, pretty much the same way, is the big distraction. Now these odd men are stalking the trailer at this point. I'll get to the men in a minute, but I just want to talk about, you know, how they start taunting and getting to these people. In 1977, Beauty, the one dog, is missing, and Bobby, the son, ends up walking out in the middle of the night, or in the middle of the day, I'm sorry, and he hears barking and noises and stuff. He ends up getting scared because he finds the dog dead. He trips and falls. Same thing pretty much happens in 2006. The dog gets out, he wanders off, he sees the dog dead, he trips, he falls. Okay. So then after all that happens, Bobby keeps it all a secret because his sister Brenda ends up finding him, you know, like in the middle of the night because he's knocked out. So then we see the same thing happening. The big main thing here that happens is how the people, the people I'm talking about, the Hills, we'll call them mutants, how the mutants get into the trailer. They use a distraction. Now they end up capturing the father and burning him at a stake. They cause this big distraction, and the family goes and sees him while two of the guys sneak into the trailer and apprehend Brenda and the baby. Now that is all pretty much the same. There's some little bit of differences, but it's nothing really to talk about. And then, once the family realizes what's going on inside the trailer, they run back. The mom gets shot, and I believe her name is Lynn, but don't call me wrong, or don't quote me on that. She ends up getting shot in the head because she stabs the one guy in the leg. Brenda is dragged out, and he tries to shoot her, but, you know, out of bullets. Long story short, she survives, but they take the baby because they want to eat the baby. That whole middle climax part is exactly the same pretty much, just with some minor differences. So let's talk about the ending, and we can wrap these two up. Now the ending are two completely different things. As I said, we have the mutants. In 1977, let me just take you a step back, the mutants are not really mutants, they are a family. The gas station owner tells Big Bob that he had an odd son, Harry, real strong, hairy, different kind of man. He cast him out into the desert. He ended up finding a family out there. They bred, and they did whatever it took to survive. In 2006, it's completely different, where that there was bomb testing there, and there was a mining town there, and they said we're not leaving, so they went into the mine. The stuff blew up, caused them to be completely, like, just mutilated and weird and have all kind of body defects. So there's the big difference. So after the family dies and some things happen, there's three characters left: Doug, Brenda, and Bobby. Well, this is where it gets different. Brenda and Bobby end up staying at the trailer, and in 1977 they make some traps, okay? And in 2006, they make a warning sign. They use a rattle and some fishing line and stuff. But they also do set up one trap as well. So in 1977, as I said, these people were more normal. They just were survivalists, I would consider them. They were a little freaky, and they were a little, you know, mutilated and stuff, but for the most part, they were just weird and like they wanted to survive. So there's just a small family, and the main leader is called Papa Jupiter. Papa Jupiter and the other guy, I cannot think of his name, are going after Brenda and Bobby. Meanwhile, Doug split off, and he's going to find his daughter. He has the dog. He sends the dog out. The dog kills one of the guys, and Papa Jupiter goes to Bobby and Brenda. In 2006, pretty much the same thing happens. He goes with the dog, but instead of finding their hideout, it's just like a cave. It's inside this town, and there's a lot more of these mutants than he thinks. He finds the baby. He actually ends up getting knocked out and caught, wakes up in an old freezer. There's some more things that happens. Long story short, he ends up fighting the big guy instead of Beast fighting him, which I don't remember his name, and killing him. The big thing that is different here is, or I mean completely the same, is that they're ordered to kill the baby. Now there's walkie-talkies throughout this film, both films, and they're very important. So after all that is said and done, it's like the big ending scene. Papa Jupiter in 1977 falls for both traps, but the first trap he falls for gets a little bit banged up and mutilated, and the second trap he somehow survives and goes after Brenda and Bobby. Because the second trap failed, Brenda ends up stabbing him with an axe and Bobby ends up shooting him. He dies. In 2006, the alarm goes off and they have their mother and Bobby's sister in the car. They're already dead. The alarm goes off, it's just a tumbleweed, and they find out that the mother's taken. Well, Bobby goes out and finds his mother. He's being eaten by another mutant. The mutant chases him back, and once he gets chased back, he takes Brenda. They set up the trap of the trailer, and we'll get to that in a second, and they go out, and then that is how they end up killing him. Now the trailer thing I was saying about the trailer trap is very important. How it's set up is that they took propane tanks, they have the gas going off, and then once they open up the door with matches, it strikes on the match pad and then it blows up the trailer. Papa Jupiter actually knows what's going on and he just opens the door and like runs away. They don't really show it. But the other one, the guy actually gets hit by it, falls on this thing, and Brenda ends up taking an axe to his head just to finish him off. So that is that side, but then what about Doug? Well, Doug is basically, gets the help of Ruby, which is one of the mutant girls who doesn't want to be a part of this family anymore, doesn't want to be part of the mutants. She wants to do good and wants to fit into society. She ends up helping Doug. But in 2006, this is where it's different. He ends up obtaining the baby, but loses the baby. Ruby gets the baby, and then as he meets up with Ruby, he gets sneak attacked, and then there's another guy, and they end up fighting. He ends up shooting him, and this is where it's different. Once Doug gets caught up with the last guy, Ruby does two different things. In 1977, you see Doug struggling with this guy, and he doesn't know what to do. He's freaking out. He's basically, this guy's ready to kill Doug, when Ruby picks up a rattlesnake and throws it on the guy. It bites him, and then Doug finishes him off. In 2006, Ruby gives him the baby. After Doug beats up this guy, the guy ends up getting up. After he shoots him and everything, is holding a gun at Doug and the baby. Ruby pushes him off the cliff and they die together. So that is how each movie ends. But what do I think takes the cake on this? Guys, you're not going to believe this, but I'm going to have to give it to The New Age. The New Age takes it just because they did, I think they had a more interesting story with the family in the hills and how they were mutants and they didn't want to leave the mine, and they explained everything better. Yeah, they dragged some stuff out. The ending was a little bit, I would say that the classics won the ending, but as the movie for a whole, I enjoyed the more drawn out, the more guts, the more gore, the more storyline and development of characters. Where in 1977 we really didn't get the development of characters. It was kind of hard to follow at times, and I caught myself nodding off. Both films are great though. I would consider you watching them. So next I got to watch I Spit on Your Grave. I'm going to tell you guys right now more spoilers, and also this is a very, I would consider it adult rated film. So first up, I Spit on Your Grave, it was made in, the original film was made in 1978. The director was, oh my god, Mir Zarchi, I don't even know, I'm sorry. He also wrote this story. And then we got the remake in 2010. The director was Stephen Monroe, and we had Sarah Butler as Jennifer Hills, Jeff Brennan as Johnny Miller, and in 1977 we had Camille Keaton as Jennifer Euron Tabor as Johnny. So those are the big main characters. Now, what's this movie about? Well, this movie goes pretty much hand in hand except for the deaths, and that is it, guys. I don't have much to talk about these films. The movie is about a young woman who is an inspiring writer, and she lives in the city, and she's fed up with the city, so she rents a cabin for a weekend in the woods in the middle of nowhere. So the big difference is when she pulls up to the gas station and she meets Johnny and the boys for the first time. In 1976, they are very nice, they're very friendly, very helpful. I'm sorry, 1978. They are very helpful, they're interested in her. But in 2010, man, they are weird. They're like backwoods guys. You know, they kind of, Johnny and her and Jennifer kind of get into like a little spat. It's very interesting. So, the main difference with these two films from this point on is the digital camera. The digital camera is used a lot throughout this film. So, in 78, what ends up happening is the girl, Jennifer, the main character, is basically, she goes up to the woods and she's enjoying her time. You see her writing her book. There's like a small montage, but there's these, you know, people spying on her. Basically, the same thing happens in 2010, but the digital camera is involved, and only one person is spying on her. In 1978, there's a boat that goes past with the guys in it. That's the big difference there. So, this is where it gets really, really graphic. There is a main character by Johnny's friend Matthew, who... There's a big scene in both films where they are fishing, and they're saying that Johnny can get any girl, and this, that, and the other, and Matthew, you know, they make fun of Matthew for being a virgin and all this other stuff. Says, well, I can get any girl that I want, blah, 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 so they challenge him to, you know, do whatever. Now, that is in 2010. In 1978, it's more that they're making fun of Matthew for being a virgin, and that they're going to get him laid. In blunt terms, they're going to get him laid, and they're going to do whatever it takes to get him laid. So guys, this is where it gets graphic. In 1978, the guys decide that they're going to basically catch Jen and rape her. So what they do is they she's on her boat, and they throw a rope and they hitch her boat, and they pull her into the woods. They taunt her, they chase her around. Johnny, the leader of the pack, ends up telling Matthew, the one friend, to rape her. He won't do it, he backs down. And Johnny ends up raping her. It's a pretty brutal scene, guys, so I'm just warning you ahead of time. In 2010, it's much different. The guys end up breaking into her house and taunting her for a while, and they do a lot of sexual things. Nothing really bad, but they're just calling her some bad words and some, you know, inappropriate language for women. She ends up actually breaking out of the house, runs into the sheriff. Sheriff doesn't believe her that these things are happening and brings her back to the house to check everything out. Well, here you find out the sheriff is actually in on it. That's the main difference. In 2010, there's a sheriff involved, where in 1978 there isn't. So back to 1978, she gets up after being raped by Johnny. They're telling Matthew to do it. He still chickens out, and she runs around the woods a little bit, and the next guy catches her and rapes her. Back in 2010, at this point, after she finds out that the sheriff is in on it, they make Matthew end up raping her, and then she ends up escaping, running out to the woods, and that is when she gets pushed, and basically the second guy is pushing her head in water and ends up raping her there. In 1978, she actually goes back to the house, and they end up getting her there, and Matthew ends up raping her, and the last friend ends up not fully raping her. He tries, but he doesn't really want to rape her. He just kind of wants her to do something else. That happens in 2010 as well, where Johnny makes her, he doesn't want to rape her, he does something else, and then Sheriff also rapes her on top of that too, but he says, I'm an ass man, and it's a very brutal rape scene. So those are the same things, which pretty much is a long, hard to watch rape scene on both films. So then this is where it gets different. In 2010, they basically, she's laying there pretty much beaten and just tired and exhausted and hurting and in pain. She gets up, she walks over to this bridge, she puts her arms off, and she just falls. And in 1978, they just let her lay there, and she ends up going to the house. What ends up happening is that Jennifer, the main character, ends up going after these guys. Now here's the big main difference. Not only is the killings different, I'm not going to talk about that, how she kills the guys, because you guys know she's going to end up killing all of them. It's how she does it. In 2010, she actually loses her mind in a sense where she goes primal, she goes survival. She says to myself, I'm going to do what it takes to kill these guys. And she kills them very, very brutally. 1978 takes a big different approach. She actually uses her sexuality. She seduces the men and actually in some cases will have sex with them, and then once they're in the middle of the act, she kills them, which is so cool and different. It shows the power of the woman. So as I said here, that's the main difference, is the approach on how Jennifer kills these men. Yeah, now how does it end? Well, in 1978, after she has all of the guys killed, the last guy is in the water. She's circling around him. She just killed his friend. And she stops right in front of him. He climbs up on the motor of the boat, which this doesn't make any sense. Why would you climb on a motor of the boat? She starts the boat up. Now, this is the boat that I was talking about before that goes back and forth and they taunt her with. It ends up killing, and she starts the engine and ends up sucking him in and kill him. 2010, I think the ending was a little bit better. She actually captures the sheriff and Matthew. She takes a shotgun, no lie, shoves it up his butt, and ties a rope to Matthew's wrist. Matthew is knocked out at this point. Then Matthew, she says, you better not hope he doesn't wake up, Sheriff. Matthew ends up waking up and pulling the trigger and killing both of them. That's how that ends. After the guy's cut up in 1978, you just see her on the boat and she's free and she's smiling because, you know, she got her revenge. Same thing, like once she kills the guys, but you don't see her smiling. She has the look of revenge, and it's very heartfelt, like she's like not done. You know, she would do it again and kill if she had to. So who takes the cake? Well, not only I thought that these movies were pretty much identical, other than the killing and how the men raped her, but I thought both of these movies were so awesome and unique in their own ways. But I'm going to have to give it to the classic, and let me tell you why I'm going to give it to the classic. Because the 1978 version, she uses her sexuality. She's not a cold stone Rambo killer like in 2010. Not saying that it was bad approach in 2010, it just wasn't my style. Like, she turned into like this Rambo with no experience with anything. Like, she's a city girl. How could she know how to set up these traps and do all this stuff and kill men, you know, trick them? Just, I mean, it was cool, I loved it, but it just didn't seem to like really fit. But in 1978, with her using her powers of seduction and being a woman and flirting, that is where it got really good. Both movies are awesome. Once again, who takes the cake for both? The Hills Have Eyes, the remake, takes it, and I Spit on Your Grave, 1978, the original film, takes the cake. Hope you guys enjoyed this Fear Face-Off episode 2. Real quick before I end the film, I will say I will have another one up this week. I'm going to do 2 this week, probably 2 next week, because I have a lot of films to get through, so expect one probably by Friday or Saturday, depending on how fast I can get through these films. So as always, everybody, take care and happy watching.